It must have been amazing just seeing the sea again.
Yeah, that was amazing. But honestly, there was more of it being similar to what it used to be like than there were changes.
Yay.
Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast helping you and your family cruise a little smarter. And I'd like to welcome back to the show for our third day in a row. She is still hanging. She's still holding in there. Christy, all the way down in Florida. How you doing today, Christy?
I am well. This has been a lot of togetherness, Steve. I mean, I like you.
I know. It's...
But...
Hey, you know what? I feel like I have to put the training wheels back on this show because we have got a show that we have not done in, I don't even know, well over a year at least.
I mean, it's been a real long time. And I think every single person out there is like, when the ship used to say, but the ships are sailing. It's very exciting, which leads us into the show topic that we have, Steve.
Which is?
A trip report.
So bear with us today. It may be a little rough, trying to get back on the bike and ride again with the trip report, but super excited to welcome to the show for the first time, all the way down in Florida himself as well. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for reaching out. And as we know, Disney hasn't actually started sailing yet. They are getting ready to over in England with those magical staycations that they're going to be doing. But you and your family actually got to go on a cruise here this last week, I believe. What cruise did you go on and what cruise line did you pick?
Yeah, we went on Adventure of the Seas. It's a Royal Caribbean ship, and we left on June 12th and we returned on the 19th. So it was a week-long Bahamas and Caribbean sailing.
Was that the first one?
It was the first one. Yep.
Wow. Okay. So who traveled with you?
So my wife traveled with me, as well as our 16-month-old son, Nico.
16-month-old son. First cruise from like North America-ish.
Correct.
After a pandemic with a 16-month-old. Okay, this is kind of exciting.
Before we go into why you picked this cruise, give us a little background of your cruising history.
Yeah, so this was actually close to my 70th cruise, believe that or not. I've been just a cruiseaholic. Yeah, 70th.
I did not know that.
Wow. And I thought I had a lot of cruises.
On all sorts of lines. Yep, I actually started, my grandparents took me and a friend when I graduated high school as like a high school graduation gift. It was just addicting. And my parents were never even on a cruise before I was, and I got them into it. When I went to college, I organized some big spring break trips for all different universities. And freshman year, did a small one. Then it grew sophomore, junior, senior year of college. We were up to like a couple hundred people.
Oh, wow.
So which cruise lines haven't you been on? I guess. Have you been on all the main ones here in North America?
Yes, I've been on all the main ones. I've been on Carnival, Royal, Norwegian, Disney, Celebrity, Princess. Haven't been on Holland. I think that's all basically the mainstream ones. So
can I ask, do you have a favorite? And you don't have to say Disney, just because we're the podcast.
Well, I've actually only been on one Disney cruise, so I should, out of all those cruises, I've only been on one Disney, and it was when my wife was pregnant, so it actually wasn't too long ago. It was the last cruise we took before the pandemic hit, because it was October of, 2019. But I would say the majority of my sailings have been with Norwegian, although, probably Royal is just right up there and Celebrity's right up there too. So they're all kind of just all up there. But we had so much fun on our Disney cruise. That's why we're going on another one in October.
I have to ask, what's your highest status then? So if it's mostly a Norwegian, what do you like, Sapphire or something, or Platinum Sapphire double?
I think Norwegian on Platinum Plus. I think that's what I'm at.
Okay.
And this Royal Caribbean cruise, I turned Diamond.
Nice.
Still have to work my Disney status up there to Platinum. I want one of those cabanas on Castaway.
Yeah, no, you have to just get concierge, honestly, to get a cabana. Unless you're on the Magic or the Wonder at this point. And even those, there's too many concierge staterooms, and they take them all before anybody else can get them. So sometimes during like maybe the season's January February, maybe the seasons where it might not be as warm, there might be a lower demand for them. But I mean, honestly, everybody just needs to know that even with platinum status, you're more than likely not getting a cabana. At this point, we've done the math on, I don't know why I'm on this tangent, but we've done the math on the cabanas. You can't even be in concierge and guarantee that you're getting a cabana anymore.
Crazy.
So there are many concierge guests that are not getting cabana, which is insane to me. So anyway, I did reach out to somebody at Disney to see if they added more cabanas during the pandemic, and I got a not likely. So anyway, carry on.
Well, I'm going to make an assumption here as to why you went on this cruise, because it was the first cruise back and you wanted to get back to cruising, taking your son for the first time. That must have been pretty exciting. And then sailing out of Nassau. Had you sailed out of Nassau before?
No, I mean, been to Nassau more times than I can count, but never. Actually, I lie. I have sailed out of Nassau once before, and it was because when I was living in Pennsylvania, I was flying to a cruise the day of, and our flight was delayed and we missed the ship. So Carnival flew us to Nassau to board the ship the next day. So we actually made it to Nassau on embarkation day, and day 2, the ship was in Nassau and we boarded the ship there.
I was going to say, because besides like that celebration or whatever that like party boat is that goes back and forth, there's not traditionally been a cruise line that has started their cruising from Nassau.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Well, let's jump into this cruise then. For people who've never cruised with Royal Caribbean, which I have not yet so far, and I'm familiar with most of the ships, but could you kind of compare what is Adventures by the Seas compared to as far as Disney's? Is that kind of the fantasy or dream size?
Well, the ship itself is 21 years old. So I'd say probably the older Disney ships might be comparable.
Okay, so more like the Magic or Wonder, maybe a couple thousand people.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the max capacity is 3,800.
Okay.
And a little over 1,000 crew.
It's 137 gross tons, so it would be comparable to the Fantasy.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So let's talk about planning for this cruise first. So obviously there was many different protocols that were going to be different than a normal cruise. What did Royal Caribbean provide you, or how did they provide you information ahead of time to prepare you for what you were going to expect?
We knew the cruise was going to go on sale because, Royal announced it before the bookings actually went up online. But at that time, when we were booking the trip, and this was back in end of February, beginning of March, when they started going on sale, there were no released protocols yet. So we were just kind of throwing our name out there like, hey, we'll go on the trip, fully expecting like, we'll probably have to wear a mask. We'll probably have to be vaccinated, but we were planning on all that from the jump anyway. So in terms of the protocols being released by Royal, they actually did not get released quickly at all. A couple weeks prior to the cruise, they would send us an email on Friday afternoons being like, hold in there, hang in there. One more week, then the CDC would change something and they'd be like, oh, we're just going to tweak a couple more things. Just give us more time, more patience. And then finally, the Friday before the cruise, we got an email from Royal with all the protocols, letting us know that if you were vaccinated, you would not have to wear a mask on board, that you would have to show proof of vaccination, and we would have to comply with all the Bahamas health visa, like obtaining that and everything. And that in Coco Cay and all the ports of call, we were able to roam freely. So that was kind of outlined to us there.
Was this
literally 2 days before the cruise? No, a week before, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, a week before. But literally 2 days before, we got like a very last minute email from Royal saying, hey, we know you're all vaccinated. However, we're going to test you at the pier, which originally they weren't going to test us at all. They were just going to ask for our vaccine. But I think what happened with the Millennium the week before, with the 2 adult cases of COVID, they kind of changed gears and were like, oh, we should probably test everybody before they get on the ship. So it wasn't a big deal. It was just like another link they sent us that we had to pre-register for something, because it wasn't through Royal. It was through a hospital in the Bahamas that was going to do the testing. So that was kind of the communication. I would say the communication was good. Like we were receiving regular updates. We weren't going into anything blind at all, but we were just had to have a little extra patience with them.
And they weren't testing children under 2, I believe, right?
That's right. Yeah. So my son did not get tested at all. And to go into the Bahamas, he got a health visa, but it was automatically issued to him. We didn't have to show, proof of a COVID test, or obviously he's not eligible for a vaccine yet. But we actually were in the Bahamas in March for a land vacation to Baha Mar, where we took a long weekend over there from Tampa. So we were kind of familiar with obtaining the health visa and submitting everything to the Bahamas. And it's a very quick process. You just submit your paperwork, and probably within a day or two, they say, hey, you're approved, pay your $40 fee, and you pay your fee, and then you get a QR code to enter the country.
And that basically is showing that you tested, either were vaccinated or you tested negative. Is that correct?
No, you had to be vaccinated. You had to still test, I believe.
Test negative. Okay. I don't want to get too deep in the woods
Yeah.
with some of the stuff because it could possibly change. Or I'm sure it could.
Yeah, it'll change.
Yeah.
Definitely will change.
Did you need to book anything ahead of time? I'm thinking kind of now is for your son too, being 16 months old, as far as, what was the restrictions on him being able to do things on the ship?
Yeah, no restrictions for him whatsoever. They were encouraging you to book things ahead of time because they were limiting capacity and venues. So that really played into effect with the specialty restaurants. They have 3 on board. So they were saying, if you want to eat at these restaurants, book ahead, please. And we actually bought a package, a three-night dining package. So with the intention of going to all 3 restaurants. And when we got on board, we were trying to make our reservations, and so many things were already sold out. So, But with Royal, if you buy a package, you can't reserve ahead of time because it'll charge you the fee. It doesn't recognize you have a package. So that was a little tough. We ended up getting what we wanted, just not on the particular days that we wanted. And with the shows, you definitely needed a reservation to get in. They were not letting you into the theater or to the ice rink if you did not have a reservation for that show.
How about for the nursery? Did you book that ahead of time as well for him, or did you put him in the nursery?
Yeah, this ship, unfortunately, is one of the few Royal ships that does not have a Royal Tots nursery on board. So we were stuck with him the entire time, which, it was fine. It was fine. We dealt with it, but looking forward to having that on other Royal Caribbean ships and Disney when we go in October. But in sticking with some of the COVID protocols, when we got to the Bahamas, the Bahamas still requires you to wear a mask everywhere you are, whether you're inside or outside, and of course in the airport. But the cool thing about this particular cruise was once you got through customs and you collected your luggage and went outside the airport, Royal Caribbean had the luggage carts that they usually are right outside the terminal, right at the airport. So you just threw your bag on right there, and Royal Caribbean took it from the airport. You did not have to pay extra for it. They just took it from you. So it was great.
Did you fly in the day of the cruise?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Once you got on board then, since you and your wife were vaccinated, you did not have to wear a mask. For people who were not vaccinated, how did Royal differentiate them? Or were they not allowed on board? Did I miss that?
They weren't allowed on board. Yeah,
Okay.
If you were over 16, yeah, correct. If you were over 16 on our sailing, you had to be vaccinated.
Okay.
And what they did was, because Nassau right now, that cruise terminal is under a complete multi-million-dollar renovation. When you sail into Nassau, there was that festival place thing and little straw market thing, and that's all bulldozed. It's gone. The actual pier is under some pretty heavy construction right now. Actually, only I think 2 of the cruise berths are usable right now. The rest of them are either being completely redone or under some sort of maintenance. So Royal couldn't utilize any pier side check-in or anything like that. So they utilized a hotel. They utilized the Hilton, which is probably a 5-minute walk or so from the cruise pier. And that's where we got our temperature checked. We got our COVID test. And when we got our COVID test, they put us in a ballroom after we got the test. And you were not able to leave that ballroom until your test came back negative, which it took about 15, 20 minutes. once you became negative, they gave you a sticker. And that sticker meant that you were able to go to the pier to board the ship. So that's kind of how they tested everybody. And then they did have shuttles, like if you were just wanted a quick ride over to the pier. But because we had the baby and we're pretty particular about having a car seat when we're in some sort of transportation, we just put the baby in the stroller and took the 15-minute walk. But on that 15-minute walk, we did get yelled at because we weren't wearing our mask, and you have to wear a mask outside.
2 more questions, and we can kind of go through like all our general stuff. But did you have to take a test again during the cruise? Was everybody tested again?
Yeah. So Royal, I think probably starting on like day 3 of the cruise, they started sending us like a little note like, hey, be sure to register for your debarkation test, which they were going to do on days 6 and 7. And it was really easy. I mean, you just pre-registered ahead of time. They were utilizing one of their dining rooms because Adventure has a 3-story main dining room. The top story they weren't using at all because the capacity was so low. So that's where they were testing everybody. And same thing, we got our test and we weren't restricted to sit in an area or anything like that. They let us move about the ship. And probably within 30 minutes, we got an email from Royal saying, here's your negative test to go back home.
Okay, so my last question, just kind of overall, thinking about it, what in your mind kind of changed, or what was different about cruising on this first cruise compared to past cruises? Anything else just overall? And we'll go into specifics about food and entertainment and everything else.
Sure.
Anything just big stick out?
The capacity, for one thing. I mean, we had 1,068 guests on our cruise. So out of a possible 3,800 or so. The crew, I think it can have a little over 1,000 crew members, and they had 975. They were pretty well staffed to the amount of passengers they had. But I would say that was the biggest thing that you noticed, that nothing was crowded. Like there was no crowds or gatherings, or it was not hard to get a seat or find a pool chair or anything like that, just because the capacity was so low. But on the flip side, because of that, they were just a little bit more limited in their service. Like for instance, up at the buffet, they were only using half one side. So the other side was completely blocked off. And the other bad thing, which I guess we can talk about when we get to the food, was the Windjammer, which is their buffet, was closed for dinner service. With the baby, that was kind of a challenge because we like to kind of get him fed before we try to go attempt to eat dinner at a sit-down restaurant. Other than that, the only thing I noticed was, all the crew were wearing masks. They don't have to wear them in the crew areas, but in guest areas they do. You could not sit at a bar. So if you went to a bar to get a drink, they would allow you to sit there while they made your drink. And then they would politely ask you to please vacate the bar and find a seat somewhere else in the nicest way possible.
Anything else stand out on embarkation? Otherwise, I'll let Chrissy go into the stateroom part.
No, the rest of the embarkation was easy. Walk down the pier. We had to show our set sail, pass one more time to the security agent, and walked on like normal. Since we were the first cruise back, obviously our stateroom was ready. So we were able to walk right up to that. The one thing I should mention, they were really strict on your boarding time. When you checked into the cruise, you could pick a 1-hour arrival window. And if you were there, like we saw a ton of people hanging around the Hilton lobby because they were there early and they were not letting them go up for their COVID test. Just keep that in mind. I think that's going to stick for all the lines in the future.
I think they've been,
the time being.
They were trying to do that before COVID. And, people just weren't listening to their arrival times. And so it never could stick. But I think they are going to use this as an excuse, so to speak, to make it actually be what they keep in line going forward.
Exactly.
What stateroom did you pick? And is it, let's just answer that first.
Yeah, so we splurged a little bit because of our first cruise back, and we had so many Royal Caribbean canceled sailings because, we would have one book, it would get canceled, go to the next one, it would get canceled, go to the next one. And they kept giving us the 125% future cruise credit or whatnot on any additional monies that we paid. So we had so much credit that we're like, let's just book a suite since it's our first trip back and we have the baby and we just need some extra room. So we booked a grand suite. It, I would say, was maybe 2.5 times the size of a balcony room. The one thing about it was there was no separation of like the bedroom from the main area, like the living room area. There was a curtain that you could pull.
Did it go all the way across? Because some of the royal rooms don't even have. So that's good. So the curtain.
Yeah, it went all the way across. Yep. So, but where we ended up sticking the baby, when you walked in the room to the right, immediate right, there was a bar set up, just a dry bar, not a wet bar or anything like that. But that little bar area was like perfect to put the pack and play. And it was nice and dark over there. And so that's where he ended up sleeping.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Would you pick this type of cabin in the future? Would you pick, maybe even a junior suite or something in the future? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I would say the junior suites are probably just as spacious. I mean, maybe a little smaller on Royal, but in terms of like how the room is set up, except for having that little bar area, you're going to get the space. With an older ship like Adventure of the Seas, there's not a lot of suite perks like some of the newer ships have. Like some of the newer ships have their own suite restaurant and things like that. They did have a little like lounge on the top floor on the 14th deck where they had little appetizers at night and drinks and things like that. But that was kind of the only above and beyond thing that you got for having a suite. I've been on Norwegian before and you have like butler service and things like that. On Royal, you do not. So there's no butler service. Like we asked our room steward from when he introduced himself to us, like, oh, can you just make sure there's milk for the baby, like whole milk in the fridge? And he was like, not really my department. Call room service or go to the buffet and get it yourself. I don't know. I think for Royal, for the older ships, I would just book the junior suite.
Yeah, something to note about the suites. And for people that are interested in it, your travel agent can explain it, but certain of the ships, the newer ships and even the Oasis class ships, and then the newer, I guess, classes of ships, they have these suite categories now. And depending on which suite you get will depend on what your inclusions are. The junior suite, besides embarkation, almost has no other privileges. So that you do get priority embarkation, but I'm pretty sure that's like the only extra item that you would get, except for the extra space. And I do agree. We did a junior suite with cruising with my son when he was pretty little. He was under 2 for sure in one time. And that extra space does make a huge difference, but all the room categories do not have a curtain that goes all the way across. Like we were on a ship that was the same size as the Adventure of the Seas. And our junior suite curtain was just like there for looks.
Right.
It was like a half curtain off to the side to make it look pretty, but you couldn't actually cover anything up with it. So that was a little ridiculous. So just for people, talk to your travel agent if you want that. And if you want to get into a suite and want to know what is included, because it doesn't include everything.
The one thing I would say though with the suites is like my wife and I did a suite for our honeymoon when we were actually on Celebrity. You get to enjoy the suite perks a lot more when you do not have a child with you. Like I just don't think we really got to enjoy all the extras that we could have even accessed with the suite because we were having our attention on him. But we're going to try for our next cruise the 2 connecting balconies and just get us a room and we'll put my son and my wife in one room, me in the connecting room, just to make sure we can get the rooms and try that method, just so we have double the space, but just a regular room. I think that'll be just as fun.
And you get 2 bathrooms that way.
Exactly.
You don't have to go up to the gym to use the ship. Well, let's turn to food. I'm curious to see how this worked. Obviously, they had a buffet. I'm curious to hear about that. But so you had a package where you could book some of the specialty restaurants. Did that work out? You said you didn't get necessarily the nights you wanted, but how did the food options work? Did you eat the main dining room? Did you eat specialty mostly? What did you do?
We did 3 specialty nights, and then the other 4 days we ate in the main dining room. Our schedule, we went the first 2 nights to the main dining room, And then we did 3 nights specialty. So day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then day 6 and 7, we did back in the main dining room.
And did you have to pick times for each one of those, or how did that work? How does that work?
Yeah, for the main dining room, we had an early seating, so 5:30 was our seating time. For the specialty restaurants, we tried to make them around the same time, so like 5:36-ish. That's when we sat down at those. And we made all of our reservations on the first day, so we just went right up to the restaurants person, and he helped us get everything sorted right from when we got on board.
So with less people, I'm assuming the dining rooms weren't as crowded or people pushed together. Did you guys have more space?
Yeah, on all their dining rooms, even their specialties, they would have the table that was directly next to you would not be occupied. So they would not seat anybody there. So there was limited capacity in these smaller specialty venues, which I think was why it was harder to get a reservation, even with only 1,000 people on board. The main dining room, I mean, you had your same table every night, like usual on a Royal Cruise, but they were not seating like different parties together. Like you weren't going to sit with strangers at all. We had like a table that could probably have held 6, I would say, and it was just the 3 of us, and he was always in a high chair. So we had plenty of space.
So I know we've had a lot of questions with people with younger kids and how it works cruising with younger kids. How was it, the food situation for your son? Did they have everything he needed, or did you bring anything? Well, you didn't bring anything with, but did they have everything you needed?
Oh yeah, they had like kids menus in all the restaurants, the main dining room and in the specialty restaurants. But after we didn't have a great dinner experience the first night, just because who knows, different environment or whatnot, we just decided to try to feed him before we went to eat. And that worked out really well. But like my previous comment, the buffet was not open. So we always had to order room service. So room service is free on Royal Caribbean if you're sticking to like the main selection of items. You just tip the person that comes to the door.
Matters when you order it too, because I'm pretty sure that after like midnight or something like that, there's a charge.
So we were just ordering like grilled cheese, chicken tenders, whatever, just to the room. And also like probably on day 3 or 4, I figured out that the suite lounge had appetizers out every night. So while my wife would get ready, I would just take him up there. I would get a drink and he would just pick at whatever they had. And actually a lot of the stuff up there was kid friendly. Like they had chicken skewers and cheeses and crab cakes and like things that he would pick at. So he was actually eating a lot of that food every night too.
That's awesome. Did you guys get the drink package? Because Royal Caribbean has a drink package. Did you guys purchase that?
Yeah, we purchased it, which I don't know if we got I know I got my money's worth. I don't know if my wife did or not, but it's just nice having a package ahead of time, just so it's kind of already a sunk cost, you know what I mean? Paid off.
If you are doing a cruise where you're doing the 2 connecting cabins, you could get the drink package. And then because typically like Royal and the other cruise lines, if one person has the package, they make both adults have it. But you could then get it and then she doesn't have to get it.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So if she's not getting her value out of it, then she could do it that way. One other thing really quick, we are going to do an episode about traveling with kids at some point, but I still think it's useful and helpful to throw in a couple of tips. So please do that as, if you think of, traveling with basically a toddler, a 1-year-old, we would love to have those tips for our listeners. But Steve, you mentioned not bringing any food on board. And honestly, I would say if you're traveling with a young child, you're going to want to bring those like puffs if your kid eats that, or their cereal, so that they are used to their tasteless, dry, toddler friendly, 1-year-old friendly cereal so that they can have it. Now, Disney, just before the pandemic, was really strict about making sure it was all sealed in sealed containers. So you are going to want to make sure that whatever you bring is a brand new box or bag of whatever food you're bringing for your infant, in case they are going to be particular about those requirements again. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you're traveling with a young one, you got to sometimes bring some of that food.
Yeah, we did. We brought like Pirates Booty puffs that were, in a little prepackaged things, Ritz Bits, crackers. We bought Chewy granola bars. I think they were our 3, and the Goldfish. They all came on board with us, and I'm glad we had them. Because just like you said, sometimes they don't want all that greasy French fries and chicken fingers all the time. They just want their normal snacks.
Yeah, they want what they're used to. And right. And, even if the cruise line had a cracker, it's not going to taste like their cracker. They have some kind of cereal. It's not going to taste like, and there's no point in getting into an argument with a kid about something like that. Just get them what will work. All right.
Sure.
Definitely, I agree. The kids want their crab cakes and concierge. So.
Yeah.
I had to get that out there.
So your son ate crab cakes, though? That's fantastic.
We try to expose. He's 16 months, so he'll at least try anything that you put in front of him. He's really not. He is picky once he puts it in his mouth, but he'll put anything in front of him. He'll try it. I just gave him whatever they had up there every night.
I love it. I love
it. Yeah. And it'll work. Like, keep doing it. And then they'll all go through, I don't know why I'm giving this advice, but they'll all go through that stage where they just stop eating all like the meats and all of that. And then just keep kind of wait it out. And then Steve, cut this out. But that's when the parents give chicken tenders because they think, oh, my kid has to eat something. But if you just wait it out and let them get through that boycott of the food, then they will ask for grilled chicken again, and then they'll eat that. And then they won't even eat a chicken nugget. My child does not like chicken nuggets.
Neither do my kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
see?
all right.
So you just have to wait it out. Okay, go on.
So people are probably yelling right now, it was a pandemic. They had the Windjammer open, Cabanas. How did that work?
They were, even though we had a limited capacity, when you got to the Windjammer, they were allowing you to make reservations if you wanted to. However, they never enforced saying like, oh, there's too many people in here that you can't sit. So we never made a reservation. But they do scan your CPAS card when you go in, like each individual person. So they know exactly how many people are in the restaurant. And basically, when you're finished eating, you go out a different door and they scan your CPAS card to kind of check you out of the buffet. Once you walked in, they did ask you to wash your hands. So I don't know if this was on Adventure already or if it was already there, but they had hand washing stations like soap, water, and they were asking you to use that and then to sanitize on top of it. They still had like the plates and the roll-up silverware out, so you could just take that as you needed it. But as you were walking down the buffet, if you wanted something, you just asked the crew member and they would give it to you. So there was just you couldn't touch anything. And people were being pretty respectful. I didn't see anybody going and like reaching for anything at all. People were respectful of it. During the first day, I saw people wearing masks in there. And actually, I wore a mask my first day in there just because that was probably the busiest area on the ship where there's most people. But by day 3, 4, I felt like we were spreading out enough. And the seats, like I said, they weren't allowing people to sit next to each other. Like they had a table and then they had a table that said reserved for distancing. You had to space out.
So one last big question for you, Nick. I know we've got a couple other people going on Royal. For some of them, it's their first time. With the specialty restaurants, what would you recommend? Do you have a top 3 if there's more than 3 on board, or what would you recommend for people?
There's only 3 on Adventure. So we tried all 3. The steakhouse was the best meal I had on the entire week. I actually wish we did that twice, but
would they have let you?
Went once. Yeah, they would have let you.
Okay. We
went once. It was fantastic. I mean, the service was great. And maybe that meal too was just the baby was being really good. Like he was just watching his iPad and getting ready for bed and drinking his milk and just leaving us alone for an hour and a half to enjoy the meal. And we enjoyed the entire meal. Like we really did. We had sushi one night. They don't have a hibachi on this particular ship, but they had sushi and some plated Asian sorts of food. That was a great meal too. If you have the package, they let you order up to $39 worth of food of sushi, which is, plenty of money you would not be able to spend it, I'm sure. And we ate at their Italian restaurant, which, it was okay. I wouldn't say it was anything better than you can get on land, but the specialty restaurant food I thought was better in quality and presentation than what we were getting in the main dining room. I mean, I think that's pretty consistent on a lot of these mainstream cruise lines that offer specialty dining. That's why I've always been impressed with that. My one Disney cruise, I thought the food was great. The main dining room food was a better quality than what you get on Royal Caribbean and Norwegian and things like that.
Well, and it would be because Disney is a premium cruise line, which is also Celebrity, Princess, Norwegian, Carnival, and Royal Caribbean are not. So they're the mass market cruise line. And so their category of food for their main dining room food is that lower, it's a lower quality. I hate to use that word, but it is a little bit. I mean, it's still good, but yeah.
Yeah. I hear where you're coming from. Like we did choose, like you could see all the menus for the whole cruise on your phone. Like they were really, I guess I should have mentioned this in the COVID part, but there was no menus. Like they did not want paper menus going around. Everything was QR code. If you did not have a Wi-Fi package, they allowed you to access the Wi-Fi for their app. So you could still see the menus and you could still see the activities, but all of that was driven via the app. So we actually looked ahead of time to see, like with the one night they're having the lobster and steak, like we'll go to the main dining room that night because we know that might be a little bit better quality meal.
What internet package options existed for your cruise?
They had two. Oh, well, they probably had more than two, but if you wanted the full cruise, they had just one where you could message and basic internet, and then there was the step up where it was streaming, like surfing and stuff like that. So we did the streaming version. We actually paired it with our drink package when we bought it, so it was a little bit bigger of a discount. It was like a deluxe drink package and a Zoom or Vroom, whatever they call it, internet package. And it was the surfing one, which was actually great, especially for like Disney Plus and things like that. It worked fine. Like it worked perfectly. I still had some movies downloaded on my iPad and things like that, but you could stream Netflix or whatever you wanted. Like I brought an HDMI cable to hook up to our TV, and we were able to watch everything perfectly fine.
Blowing Disney Cruise Line fans' minds right there with that option.
Yeah.
Here's a concept. Get some internet people could use.
Yeah. Like my phone, I have AT&T, and I'm sure all of them do this now, but with the Wi-Fi calling. So like, say my mom called me on my regular cell phone number. I was getting the phone call on the ship and answering it, and it was working fine. And I was on airplane mode. So I had no cellular data, but you could call or anything with that high-speed internet. So it was great.
That's awesome. Do you remember how much that package combo cost?
So we had it like under a promotion. They always run these promotions, but for the deluxe and the internet per person, it was like $550, I want to say, including the gratuity.
Okay. What did you guys do for breakfast and lunch usually during the cruise?
Yeah, so breakfast the first day they had, if you were in a suite, you could eat at Giovanni's, the Italian restaurant, as like a sit-down option. So we did that a few times, but we just found it was easier just to go to the Windjammer and just go to the buffet. They did have one of the main restaurants open for breakfast too. So you could, if you wanted a sit-down breakfast, you could definitely get that. For lunch, I believe we just ate in the Windjammer every day for lunch. One thing about this particular Royal Caribbean ship, they don't have like the burger and stand out by the pool or the Mexican place that some of them have. It's just a pool deck. If you want food, you have to go to the buffet. And the one bad part was I think they closed around 3:30 for the day. Like that was it. That's kind of one of my bigger complaints with Royal, like overall. Well, maybe not on the Oasis ships, but there's some times on Royal ships where you're like, where can I go to get something to eat? And really the only 24/7 place is where they're making the pizza down on the promenade. You couldn't just walk up to the pool and get like a burger and fries or anything like that.
So Royal actually does have some really cool entertainment. Like your ship had the ice skating rink, right? And then they also have some really great shows. So let's talk about that for a little bit. I know you had said earlier that you had to make reservations ahead of time, or you could make reservations ahead of time. What did you reserve prior to the cruise?
Prior to the cruise, we actually reserved nothing. So we went into this with like, we'll just take it where we can, depending on like our son's schedule. And, when you bring them on vacation and they're this young, you can try to stick to your at-home schedule. It does not work. They don't want to eat when they usually eat. They don't want to sleep when they usually sleep. I
feel like the schedule shifts for these little guys that like they might still keep a schedule, but it isn't necessarily the schedule at home. So now they're eating and they're just, I don't know why that is, but they're just used to this new travel schedule, and that's what they eat for the week. So, okay. So what did you reserve once you were on board?
They actually did a matinee ice show on one of the sea days at 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. I tried to do the 2 o'clock one, but unfortunately it was sold out. And I was reserving it the day before, so no surprise that I did not get a seat to that show. But that just goes to show you how fast these venues are selling out. But I was able to go to the 4 o'clock one, and it was the first time my son saw any sort of ice skating at all, besides hockey that's on TV. It held his attention, which was actually pretty great. So we sat in the back, so if we had to bolt out of there, we could, but he sat through the majority of the show without wanting to get down or run around or anything like that. And it was a really good quality production. They did a great job at the ice skating show.
I remember my son was mesmerized by that show as well when we did the cruise and he was little. It was very entertaining. I mean, we all thought it was great, but we were especially impressed that he was entertained by it.
So they had the main theater shows too, and they had the traditional singers and dancers that did some shows during the week, and they had a comedian and a juggler or something else. I didn't even attempt to go to any of them. I mean, I don't really love sitting through those sorts of shows anyways. I wasn't even going to really attempt. But how they set up the theaters was they had 2 seats open and then 4 seats blocked on either side of you. You literally were a party of 2 with 8 seats on either, or 4 to your left, 4 to your right, before you saw somebody else.
What if you were a party of 4?
They made you split.
For real? What if you're a party of 3?
Yeah, they were only allowing 2 people in a seat. At least in the ice, I can't comment on the main theater because I wasn't in there, so I didn't see if they were allowing. But in the ice rink, they were making sure people were sitting 2 and 2, because they had covers over the other chairs, so you couldn't really sit at the seats anyways.
What are some of the things that you and your wife enjoy doing before your son, as far as on Royal Caribbean, as far as the entertainment goes? They've got the main shows that you can go to, the ice skating show, but what other things do you like to take in while you're on board the ships?
We really like all the Royal ships have a Irish English pub on board, and it's always on the promenade area. And we love going there because they always have some sort of musician, guitar musician. Is not just a acoustic player, they're singing too. The guy that was on our ship, his name was Kieran Cox. He was probably one of the best entertainers that I've seen on a cruise ship. He was so popular in the pub, and the pub had obviously limited seating inside and outside. He was drawing so much attention, so much crowd, that they actually moved him midway through the cruise into a bigger lounge that was more meant for shows, where they do a lot of the game shows and things like that, just so more people could see him without them having to disperse people. They had some people on the ship and their name tags said 6 foot squad. So They had people that were trying to enforce hey, don't gather, you can't do this. We normally like some of their bigger promenade parties that they have. They usually have a 70s show and another sort of dance party thing. And they didn't have any of that on this particular sailing. So there was no gathering of any sort at all. Those sorts of things were non-existent, even in the nightclub. And not that I even went up there, but I saw on the cruise compass, the printed schedule, that they had lit bubbles and you could only dance with people that you were traveling with in a bubble.
Oh. So don't be a single cruiser right now. Now,
don't be that might not be a good idea.
Well, I guess it kind of makes sense, for the first cruises coming back, at least initially, until they get some more under their belt before they really start allowing some bigger gatherings like that.
They're under so much.
I know.
Everybody's watching to see. There's all these sporting venues that are packed in and everybody's on top of each other. Nobody cares about any of that. But, 2 positive cases on a cruise ship of 4,000 people, including the crew, and everybody, it's the most exciting thing on the planet. But okay.
Mm-hmm.
What other, did you participate in any other game shows or trivia or anything else like that during the day? Did they offer activities like that? What would be a normal cruise?
They had plenty of trivia. So if that was your thing, they had just as much trivia as they normally would have. And they had bingo too, just like normal. So I didn't really notice a change in like the activity schedule. They still had plenty to do at all times, whether it was, shopping or doing some sort of lead activity or whatnot. And we did sit through a couple of them, but, as long as we could. There was only 3 kids on the ship that were under 2.
I was going to ask that. And
Yes.
Here, as a follow-up to that, so on Royal Caribbean, and I was on the same class of ship as the Adventure, they used to have toys that they would allow you to check out. And they would like wash them and clean them. And it was a whole bag of toys and it was super cute. They looked like brand new toys as well. Did they offer that on this cruise?
Yeah, and we didn't even know about it because I just figured, hey, there's no nursery. We might as well not even go up there. But when we were at the splash pad, so they have a baby splash pad, kind of like not to the extent as the Disney cruises have, but it's a small baby splash pad. And that was the only area that he was able to go in with a swim diaper. And he had tons of fun in there, but the only negative was it was staffed by a lifeguard, and they had plenty of lifeguards, like a ton of lifeguards. But this baby splash pad and the older kid splash pad, which is called Splash Away Bay, they're manned by the youth staff, not the lifeguards. So that means the schedule is dictated by the youth staff. And there's a lot of times when they're closed, which was a big issue for us, especially on port days, because on port days, they would only open the splash pad from like 2 to 5. That was it.
Oh, yeah,
and when we were in Freeport the one day, we didn't really have an excursion plan. There was nothing really for us to do, so we just wanted to stay on the ship. So we actually, the day or two before, we ran into the hotel director and we said, like, it's not a complaint, like, we're not complaining at all, but we're just saying for some younger kids, we're parents with younger kids. My son's a huge water baby. Like, he loves jumping in the pool, loves being in splash pads. So for him, when we go up to that pool deck, he sees people going into the pool. He can't go in the pool. So the only thing he can do is a splash pad. And for them only to open it for a couple hours in the afternoon, it's just wasn't fair to some of the younger kids. So he actually took that into consideration at Freeport. He had it open in the morning for 2 hours for him.
Oh, that's great.
So,
yeah, especially Freeport, because Freeport it's like a shipyard. I mean, it is not so much of a developed port at this time. And so you're not like getting off and really doing anything unless you go to an excursion and do something. And so, yeah, a lot of people, especially ones with little kids, are not going to get off in Freeport.
Yeah, no, it just wasn't worth it at all. So the splash pad was kind of our only thing for him to do. But when we were at that splash pad, one of the Adventure Ocean Youth Club people was saying to us, hey, have you brought him up for the toys? Like, we have toys that we can give him. And so we brought some toys with us, so we never utilized it, but they did have it. Something, if you're going on adventure with a younger one, you can know. But I'm sure we'll get to the private island. But on the private island, he was allowed to use all water facilities with a swim diaper. Like, he was allowed to use all their splash pads and their big Oasis Lagoon pool with a swim diaper. So it was different on land than on the ship.
The ship thing has to do with, actually, I think it's federal law for the United States or something. It's some maritime law of some sort that the water has to be able to clear and be recycled. And the only water that is recycled like that are in splash pads, or some of the ships will actually, like the Oasis class, has this little like tiny pool that's not connected to the regular water system. So this is all cruise lines. Every single cruise line that operates out of the United States all has to follow this. So people just have to know babies cannot wear swim diapers in a swimming pool on our cruise lines. And it's like I said, some random law, but that law does not apply at private islands because, the ship isn't moving, whatever. That's great. Should we go right now to talk about Perfect Day at Coco Cay?
Yeah, one last question. Was there any other restrictions as far as being able to use the pool deck? People could just come and go as they pleased for the most part?
Yeah, they had the loungers spaced 6 feet apart, like they were in groups of 2 and 4. Then there was a space in between. And
so at the pool, you could sit with your family. Just
You
not an
could.
ice skating ship.
Yeah.
Okay, now I know.
You
You're
could.
outside, Christy. So.
But who knows? Maybe all that'll change. But on the top pool deck, like the one that's directly above the pool, I guess that on that ship it was deck 12. You know how that's normally like lined with loungers, like just lounger to lounger. They were spaced apart, and there was no one up there ever. Like I maybe saw one or two people ever sitting up there. That just goes to show you how it was not a fight for a chair at all. Like if you went up there at 2:00 on a sea day, you could find a lounger.
Savor this experience. Savor
Yeah,
this
right.
experience.
Exactly.
Well, let's move on to Perfect Day at Coco Cay, one of Royal Caribbean's private islands. It's their newest. Well, I don't know if it's their newest, but they redid it, right?
Right. It had a complete, like, millions of dollars of refurbishment. There's a water park on the inside. It's actually, people like pick entire cruises just to be able to go on it. And the fact that this cruise has stopped there 2 times, and I don't know, I think we've only had one other person talk about Perfect Day. So I'm actually very excited to have this discussion to say, all right, tell us all about it. Because I know that there's some stuff you have to pay for or that you can pay for, but then there's some stuff that's included. So give us the Perfect Day rundown, please.
The first thing I want to say about Perfect Day, I was there years ago when it was just a beach,
Okay.
right? Like they tendered you in, you were on a sandy beach with loungers and a temporary bar that they brought from the ship, and that was it. So going here for this first time, and trust me, I've been trying to get to Perfect Day forever. Like the one cruise I was on got diverted because of a hurricane, then all the code cancellations. So finally I went to Perfect Day, and it did not disappoint. I mean, it was unbelievable. Just like Disney, they have a pier, so the ship docks alongside. They have trams just like Disney does. So if you are, don't want to take the long walk or you need some assistance, the trams will bring you around the entire island. They won't just drop you at the end of the pier. Like it has stops. So you can utilize that service. But once you walk into Perfect Day, as you walk into your left, they have a band playing and the entrance to something called Chill Island. And then they have something called Captain Jack's, which is also another stage where they do entertainment and a huge bar. At that venue, they serve wings, which are amazing, and they do cost more, and some specialty French fries, which are also a couple dollars extra. So that's kind of right when you walk in. On your right side is the water park, the Thrill Water Park, which also you need a ticket to get into there. And I would have loved to go. It was on our sailing, it was like $89 for an adult.
Per person? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What I've heard from people that went was it was empty, obviously. So this island's designed to absorb 9,000 people. And there was 1,000 people on our cruise, and not everyone got off on the island. You can just imagine it felt like it was empty. Once you walk past the Thrill Water Park, you get to the Oasis Lagoon, which is a huge pool. They say it's the largest pool in the Caribbean. It's ginormous. It's 0 entry, so you can just walk right into it. They have a huge swim up bar for the adults. They have live music, DJ all day. They have some entertainment that happens over there.
Did your drink package include Perfect Day?
Yep, you could use your key card and get whatever you wanted. They also have beaches, so lots of beaches. You take your pick of where you want to be. The Chill Island beach is quieter, and there's not entertainment or stuff over there, but there is bars, there is food. So like you don't have to venture across the entire island to get food. And a lot of the food on that side's free. And it's the typical cruise line private island food, like barbecue, they had sandwiches, standard fare. They had Coco Beach Club, which was also an extra fee, and it was geared more for adults. So we didn't want to, I don't even know if we could have taken a baby in there or not, but anyways, that was not where we wanted to be since we had the baby, but that's an upgraded experience. They have an infinity pool over there. You get an upgraded lunch, like with lobster and things like that. And that's where the overwater cabanas are with the slides if you want to spend some top dollar for a private cabana over there. But the island's amazing. They also have this big lagoon, which is fed by seawater, and there's no waves in there. So that was great for the baby. Tons of loungers, all with umbrellas. You could just walk down. There was no waves. You could just splash around. It was perfect.
Do they have any other add-ons? Like it's at Disney, they have like parasailing and jet skiing and stuff.
Yeah.
Do they have stuff like that too?
Yeah. So I went scuba diving the one day I was there, and how they did it for my scuba diving trip. You got all your gear on and you walk down to the beach, and this guy tows you on the back of a jet ski. Like you're literally on something that they would use to.
But you have your tank too, and you're walking down the beach with it's a beach
you don't put your fins on until you get into the water, obviously. But once you're in, it's like what they would use to evacuate someone from the island if they had some sort of back injury or something like that. So you hang on, and they jet ski you out in between Coco Cay and Norwegian's private island, which is, you could see it. Great start.
That's insane.
And that's where all the coral is, between the two islands. We did about a 50-minute dive, and at the end of the dive, you are back on the beach where you started. So you don't have to take the jet ski back. You just take it out.
Oh, because it's a drift dive then?
It's not a drift dive. They just like how they do it. They just kind of. But the one thing I forgot to mention is for the little ones, they have a pirate ship splash pad and also a huge splash away bay. So this is separate from the water park, and it's free admission. And the splash away bay has a bunch of different slides. I would say it's more for maybe not toddlers, like older than toddler, but under 12, that sort of range for that. And then the pirate ship was more for like little kids.
Do they have like bigger kid spaces too? Like as far as like kid only spaces, like teens
like
or whatever,
teen
like kind of like Disney does, or I'm guessing most of them are probably going to the water parks or whatever else anyway.
Yeah, I think once they hit old enough age to go to the water park, that's where they're at all day, because they got a wave pool over there. They have the longest water slide in North America or something like that.
Oh wow, yeah.
It looks pretty intense. And they have a hot air balloon too. I guess I should mention that. Just like Disney Springs.
Yeah.
It's the same balloon as Disney Springs. You can pay to go up in that and go up 450 feet.
All right, and look around or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So with the paid for water park, would you say that's more geared towards the older kids maybe? Or could younger kids benefit from it? Like, who do you think was over there using it? Could you tell?
I think it was older kids and adults.
Okay.
They really had nothing for like a toddler in that thrill water park. Like, they have the wave pool, which might be a little too intense for a little one. And then they have this activity pool where like you jump on lily pads and swing on ropes. But again, I think it's more for teenagers.
So if a person had a school-age kid, though, still not a baby or a toddler, but maybe...
Oh, yeah, they'd be fine. They'd be fine. I'm sure there's height restrictions, so just check that. But Perfect Day was the highlight of the cruise. I mean, and being there for 2 consecutive days. We did actually have to be back on board at like 5:30, and the ship did sail away just to open the casino or whatever. And then it came back early the next morning. So we did leave the island for some time, but it was amazing. I would look for cruises, just for me and having a little one now, that would stop at a private island for more than a day. And, some Royal Caribbean ships stop at both of their private islands, Labadee and Coco Cay. I've seen some of the Disney double dip ones, and like that those are so intriguing to me, because I feel like that would be so much fun.
They are so much fun, especially for little kids. Like, I know, Steve, some of it's lost on you, but your kids were always older when you were cruising and started cruising. And for the little ones, literally, that's it. That's all you do is go to the beach, bring your bucket of toys, play in the beach, splash around in some water. That's all they can do. So you could pay to do that in an excursion somewhere, but if you can have it included in a private island that your cruise is already going to, I mean, that's where it's at.
It was perfect.
No, I get that totally. It sounds like the perfect thing. And we didn't really go over this, but it was a 7-day cruise. I know we talked about it ahead of time, but you guys left out of Nassau, went to Perfect Day, spent 2 days back to back there, had a sea day, Cozumel, sea day, Freeport, and you guys didn't really do anything in either one of the 2 ports. I know you didn't do anything in Freeport.
No, yeah, it was a rainy day in Cozumel. We got off the ship to try to go to one of our favorite restaurants, but we were trying to walk, and it was just too far, and it started raining on us, so we just ducked into a restaurant, ate some tacos, and got back on the ship. That's all we did. And in Freeport, we did not get off the ship.
Okay. Well, let's get back on board before we get to disembarkation. Anything else that we haven't touched on as far as differences on this cruise or things that stood out for you being back on board the ship? It must have been amazing just seeing the sea again.
Yeah, that was amazing. But honestly, there was more of it being similar to what it used to be like than there were changes.
Yay.
But however, now that I had to go on a cruise where I did not have to wear a mask, I just don't know if I would like going on one where I would have to wear a mask. So I always thought like if I had to wear a mask, fine. But I don't know if I would want to do it.
It doesn't look like much of the U.S. leaving cruise lines are going to require masks by vaccinated individuals. Whether or not they can enforce it or they're going to try and enforce it for the unvaccinated, at least the restrictions that are coming out now, it doesn't look like that's going to be a thing. And, with Disney, I used to think they would be more conservative, but they're definitely not being conservative at the parks. They have literally gotten rid of every single restriction, every single COVID policy. So at this point, they're not going to be more conservative on it. I don't know. I mean, the problem is the children might still have to wear them. So as of right now, they're saying that kids that are over 2 and unvaccinated will have to wear them as they move about. But, like in summer camps and stuff like that, through a lot of states, kids are wearing masks now. So I guess everybody just has to determine how it looks for their family and decide whether or not that'll work or not.
One thing I will say as we get back on the ship, the muster drill, that change is the best change that's happened in cruising. I mean,
why don't you explain that really quick?
All you have to do is just visit your muster station before the ship sails. So there's crew members. They show you how to put on a life jacket. They scan your key card. And that's it. You're done.
I love that. I mean, I love the fact that which ship did you sail on, Nick, with Disney?
Adventure of the Seas. The Dream.
The Dream. So you haven't done the Magic of the Wonder where you have to go stand out in the hot sun sometimes for when they're trying to find Mr. Schrader in room 803. Where's Mr. Schrader? We can't leave until we find Mr. Schrader. I'm picking on, no offense, there was no Mr. Schrader, but
there was a Mr. Schrader. It was just some other name.
It was another name. But oh my gosh, yeah, that sounds amazing. I hope that Disney does the same thing.
Yeah, that's a change that we can all get behind.
Unfortunately, as all cruises do, they come to an end. How was disembarkation? Anything different that way? Or did you have a question, Christy?
Well, it sounds like your son is just sad as we are that the cruise is ending.
All they did differently was they asked you to pick a time, like when you wanted to leave, and they enforced that pretty strongly. The nice thing is they didn't kick you out of your room at 8:30. You could stay in as long as you wanted. But other than that, disembarkation was very easy.
Out through customs, your bags meet you there, and then you're off to the airport. Was that pretty easy, a seamless process getting over to the airport as well?
Very easy. We had a private transfer. Super easy to get over to the airport.
Real quick, before we move on and leave the cruise, let's just spend a couple minutes. Do you have a couple of tips for traveling with a 16-month-old? I mean, we don't get to cover that very much. I did a bunch of cruises with my son when he was little, but that was before Steve and I had this podcast.
Travel with a 16-month-old tips, patience.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing. And like I mentioned before, their schedule is completely off. Just being flexible. So like with our son, he realized he was on vacation and that he didn't want to go to bed at 7:30. So I would just walk him around in the stroller and we would listen to some entertainment as long as he would, his attention would last. He would watch his iPad. I would get a drink. He would end up falling asleep in a stroller and we would just go back to the room and he'd just fall right back asleep in the pack and play. That was pretty easy. It was just, being flexible with what they wanted and that their schedules kind of rule yours. But that's my only real tip with the toddler. I was walking him around so much on the cruise that people by the end of the week were asking me like, how many miles do you walk per day? Because there's only 3 kids under 2, so not many strollers. And I was wearing my Apple Watch. I was walking about just under 9 miles a day.
Wow.
That's awesome. All right, one more question, I guess, for our listeners who've not sailed with Royal Caribbean. What advice would you have our listeners who are cruising with Royal Caribbean for the first time?
Let's see. Great for kids. Like we were the reason we chose Royal for this sailing was, well, one, we had the credit from canceled sailings, but they seem, besides Disney, to cater to smaller children better. Like Norwegian, not many of their ships have, to my knowledge, like a baby splash pad. that someone could go in with swim diapers. So I think we're going to be sticking more with Royal and Disney for a while, especially also because Royal has on most of their ships, the nursery for those that are under 3. So just like Disney, you can drop them off. It's a small fee per hour, and they'll, watch your child while you go to dinner or watch a show or whatever you want to do. That's kind of my biggest tip for like Royal with kids. Some of the other lines don't cater as well until they're 3. So if you do have a toddler, I would just either between Disney or Royal, whatever one floats your boat. But hopefully we have a nice comparison when we go on Disney with him in October.
One thing too that I don't know if Royal was doing post-pandemic or, because they're just getting back into cruising, right? Like that was one of the first cruises. It was the first cruise out of the Royal Caribbean brand to leave out of North America. So they had been cruising over in like Asia, Europe, somewhere over there, somewhere not here. So they've been cruising for much of the pandemic, but either way, they have a like toddler time. I think that's literally what it's called, where they throw a whole bunch of like toys, and not the toys you can check out and take to your room, but like toys you could play with and little climbing things and soft things. And maybe they're not going to do it right now because of the pandemic, but it is awesome. And Disney does have some open house, like family little kid times, but I thought that the Royal Caribbean toddler time was a lot better. It was a really fun little hour, 40 minutes or whatever to take our son to when we did Royal during that time period. So just something to look out for if somebody is cruising with Royal in the future.
And then I'm assuming packages are the best way to go ahead of time for if you're cruising with adults and stuff like that, as far as the drink pack. I mean, obviously the drink package is your own personal taste, I guess, which we love the drink packages on Norwegian, but going packages as far as specialty restaurants and everything else.
Yeah. Are you asking?
I would say.
I was asking in general. Yeah.
I would say we always do the packages, and I guess since we were the first North America cruise back, we got to see the updated pricing at the bar. So most of the beers were running about $8 to $9, and most of the mixed drinks were between $11 and $13. I mean, you can do your own math and see if it works out for you to pay the drink package fee.
Well, I guess as we finish up, any final thoughts, Nick or Christy, as far as talking about this cruise? Super excited that you guys were able to experience it.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. I mean, and like I said, it felt more normal than not normal. So, and nothing major, I would say, has changed. I mean, if you're worried about that post COVID, you're going to be in for a treat because it's basically the same. I mean, and probably now's the time to go since there's a lot less people since they're capping the ships. So if you want a little more space and not worry about a lounge chair, cruise in the next, I would say, 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, I will say for a short period of time, the cruise lines are limiting the number of unvaccinated persons that they can determine in advance. So there were some cruises that I was looking at because I've decided I wanted a vacation that for August and September, if I was a party of 2, I could get in. If I had a child with me, it was blocked out, which means that they already have as many children as they're going to accept on that cruise. Just definitely look in advance if it is something that you are considering, or just know that you may find yourself in a position where it might be sold out for people that might be looking. But this was great. So Nick, thank you so much for coming on and telling us. I'm so excited that we have a trip report again. So
I think those words that it's more normal than different is really going to be comforting for a lot of people out there as they get ready to hopefully start sailing with Disney or with Royal Celebrity. It was neat to see Captain Kate take the Celebrity, why can't I say the name of it?
The Edge.
The Edge out yesterday. That was awesome to see. So exciting.
And
times.
the Dreams test cruise is what, tomorrow or
Tuesday?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm confident in our October cruise.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it goes.
Hope it goes for you as well.
I guess we always finish up with that. What's up next for you and your family, Nick?
We're doing the Disney Dream 3-day cruise from Port Canaveral to Nassau and to Castaway Cay.
I'm not even going to cross my fingers. I'm just going to say, hey, when you guys get done with that cruise, come on back and talk about it, because we'd love to have you back on and hear about your experiences, Nick. So
Will do.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Thanks you once again. And we wish you and your family all the best as the summer finishes out. And we look forward to talking to you after that sailing on the Disney Dream.
Thanks. I'll be back.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Nick for coming on and sharing his and his family's experiences as they sailed on the beautiful Adventures of the Seas, Royal Caribbean's first ship to start sailing back here in the U.S. as they, well, not quite the U.S., but they sailed out of the Bahamas, out of Nassau. And Christy and I have to be honest, it was fun to finally do a trip report and kind of hear some experiences of Nick's family as they got back to sailing. And I know a lot of you out there, a lot of our listeners are going to be sailing either with Royal Caribbean, Celebrity, and I know we've got some listeners as well that need to be over in the UK sailing on the beautiful Disney Magic on the Disney staycations over there. And if you are going to be out there sailing, we would love to bring you on and let you share your experiences with our listeners so they can help cruise a little bit smarter when they finally get to get back out there sailing again. So excited to finally see the ship sailing and get a trip report out for you. Well, if you're enjoying our podcast, we sure would appreciate it if you would share it with others who you think would enjoy it as well. Also, if you have time to go over and leave us an iTunes review, that helps us get the word out about our podcast in the cruising community, the Disney cruising community, and just in podcasting travel field in general. We'd like to thank each and every one of our Patreon supporters who help bring this show out to you each and every week. We thank each and every one of them for doing that. If you would like to become a Patreon member or would like to find out more about our program, you can go over to patreon.com/DCL podcast and find out all the information there. Well, between now and our next show, if you are heading out on a vacation, staycation, or whatever you're doing as we come up on the 4th of July weekend, all of us here at the DCL podcast, myself, Steve, Christy, and Chris, want to wish you and your family just be the best. Take care of each other out there. Enjoy the time you get to spend with each other. Safe travels. Pack your patience and just enjoy your time as this summer continues along. Well, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL podcast.
The DCL podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.